not to get too caught up in like technology, but AI. In the writer sphere, people are losing their minds over this right now. I
Right.
mean, some, it's like, I think it's going to affect cover designers and narrators the hardest at first, because
Mhm.
AI really isn't writing good quality books just on its own. You
Right.
still need a person.
Right.
And if you don't embrace that technology, you're going to be left in the dirt.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Have you ever read a crime thriller and thought, that would never happen in real life? Well, the gap between fiction and reality can make or break a story's credibility. And since what we do is build authentic personal brands, we were eager to bring you our special guest today. Patrick O'Donnell is a retired Milwaukee police sergeant with 25 years on the street. He's the founder of Cops and Writers and the author of 10 books, including the upcoming thriller, The Good Collar. O'Donnell bridges the world between badge-wearing reality and page-turning fiction, helping creators craft stories that keep readers hooked while staying true to authentic police work.
Patrick, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, we've been excited to talk to you. And hey, congratulations. And for the listeners out there, he was just had a write-up in the Wall Street Journal. So congratulations for that, Patrick.
Thank you. You could knock me over with a feather. I did not see that coming, but I'll take it.
It was very impressive.
Awesome.
And we'll drop that link in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Tanya and I, as well as I think half the world at least, right, are obsessed with anything true crime. It's really gained ground in the last couple of decades for sure, because of so many different mediums that you can absorb this kind of storyline or whatnot. What sparked your interest from police, actually being a police officer, to becoming a resource for crime writers?
Well, I'm a big believer in the saying, dig the well before you're thirsty. I had the luxury of knowing when I was going to retire. A lot of people don't. And, it's not like I'm, 100 years old or something like that. I could easily go on to a second career. But I had a very once you hit the 20-year mark when you're a cop, it's like, all right, the end is nearing. And some can't let go. I was more than happy to. I absolutely loved my job. I had a front row seat to the biggest circus on planet Earth. I mean, it was just crazy. I had so much fun. I was able to make, it sounds corny. I was able to make a difference. Things were great, but it was time. So I'm like, okay, now what? So I sat down and I'm like, what should I do next? I had a long list of stuff I didn't want to do. And then I'm kind of like, okay, I have a degree in sociology. I like music. Okay, none of that's going to work. So on a lark, I wrote a book about how to buy a car. Now, the way this happened was I used to sell cars before I was a cop. I did that for 4 years. I bartended. I worked in restaurants. After I graduated from college, I did a bunch of stuff until I got on the department. So what happened was I wrote this first book, and it was a great way for me to cut my teeth. And this is when Amazon was offering, independent publishing. You could just publish your own book. There were no gatekeepers now. I mean, it started out, I had a connection with a big New York City agent. Things were looking awesome. And then she got into a huge argument with my friend that introduced her to me. And she's like, you're friends with him. I threw your manuscript in the garbage. And I'm like, okay, well, so much for that idea. So I'm listening to a podcast and licking my wounds. And it's like, yeah, you can put your book up on Amazon yourself. And I'm like, you can? I thought you had to get a bajillion reject letters from all these different agents and publishers.
Right.
I mean, we all have heard those stories, right? Until that one came along, that kind of thing. It's like, all right, I'll put it up myself. And you know what? To be honest, it was a glorified PDF. Yeah, it was good information, and I wrote it under a pen name because I'd have to get permission from the chief of police, and that I knew it wouldn't happen. They didn't even understand any of this, and I'm like, so I wrote it under a pen name, and it did okay. I started a little business. I was helping people buy cars, and that didn't work out because I was still working like 60 hours a week, and I'm dealing with different time zones. There was unanticipated things I didn't know. But hey, again, I cut my teeth in having my own little business. So that was kind of cool. And inevitably, I wrote a couple of more books that had nothing to do with law enforcement. I started going to conferences. And the magic at most conferences, at least for writer conferences, I would imagine other ones too, is at the mixer afterwards, the cocktail hour, dinner, where you're just striking up conversations with people you never met before. And you're gaining some really good knowledge from these people who have been there and done that. And what happened to me was inevitably people were coming up to me, you're that cop guy, right? And I'm like, I don't have a sign or anything, but sure. People find out. It's inevitable. And they were very nice. They were very respectful. And they're like, hey, would my character need a warrant for this? Would this really happen? What happens when you get shot? Just very innocent, good questions. So somebody that kind of befriended me is like, hey, you should write a book for writers, as far as police procedure, just so they get their facts straight. And I'm like, okay, I think I will. So my career was almost done. And I wrote my first cops and writers books. And the first one was just this ginormous book. And this same person is like, hey, you know what, Pat? If you cut that in two, you can make that in 2 books and you'll make double the money. And I'm like, ooh, I'm a big fan of double the money. All right, let's do that. So I did that and I started getting a name. And when I released the Cops and Writers books, I started a Facebook group. Same thing, Cops and Writers. And it was more or less to advertise the books that I just released. And it started out with my editor and a couple of buddies. And now there's 8,300 people worldwide that are in this group. And I started a Facebook group, podcast, because, I'm pitching these books and I'm like, well, I'm going to try and get it on as many podcasts as I can. And I found that I really enjoyed podcasts before any of this. I just love the format, and I love the flexibility of, I could listen to it on the way to the gym or while I'm in the gym, or, I got a little bit of free time. I can listen to a 20-minute podcast, that kind of thing. So I thought, well, you know what, 100 years ago when I was in college, my brother was a disc jockey at the campus radio station. I have an older brother. And when he had a hot date or he just didn't feel like going, he said, hey, could you, spin for me tonight? I'm like, absolutely. So I was comfortable behind the microphone. It wasn't scary or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I started the podcast and that blew up. And I'm like, holy cow, this is like turning into a thing. And I really didn't intend it to, but it just kind of grew legs all by itself.
Well, your story really leaned into that, right? I mean, it just came about organically. And I think that's really the way personal brands should evolve. It was very organic. So I'm curious to know, Patrick, what's the most common mistake that you see authors make when they're writing about police procedures or any part of crime?
Well, this isn't Joe Rogan, so we don't have like 2 hours or 3 hours. I'm sorry.
That's so true.
But there's so many tropes that are so cheesy and wrong. I'm to the point now where my wife loves these shows on television and I can't watch them with her because I'm laughing out loud. It's like, this is so silly. But like some of the major ones, obviously technical stuff, shooting, guns, there is no gun out there that has an unlimited supply of ammunition. It's there is no such thing. And if you shoot somebody, with a pistol, they're not going to go flying 20 feet in the air. They're going to crumble is what actually happens. But there's that trope of the lone wolf detective that's breaking all the rules and doesn't listen to his boss and, is breaking the law just to get his man. And I'm thinking, well, they'd get fired and then they'd probably go to prison. If the way it works is you work as a team. Say you're a homicide detective, you catch a fresh homicide. Yeah, you might be the lead detective, but there's going to be a boss. That's another thing. We all have bosses. I don't care where you are or what you're doing. There's always some kind of boss there. And in these TV shows, either they just don't listen to them or the boss is like an imbecile or they're just missing in action, that kind of thing. So I was a boss for 17 out of my 25 years, I was the supervisor of the cops on the street. So that really gets my goat. And it's like, no, if your boss is saying no, and in most police departments are paramilitary organizations, there's a rank structure, and you can't just disobey orders like on a whim. There are repercussions for these things. So that's a big one. And also Miranda, people get that wrong all the time. You have the right to remain silent, blah, blah, blah. It's always this like big dramatic thing, you're under arrest for the murder of Joe Blow, blah, 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 blah. I've arrested plenty of people for homicide, and almost never would I say that's why I'm slapping the cuffs on, because that is the number one time you're going to get into a physical fight with somebody. When those handcuffs come out, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. So you try to make it as less confrontational as possible. It's like, hey, you know what? You got some old stuff you got to take care of. The sheriff wants you. Yeah, I'm going to arrest you. Not the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. And they know, but for some reason in their minds, they're kind of like, maybe it's not so bad. So, and then like reading them their rights right away, there's no reason to do that. The only time Miranda is required is when you are in custody, you're under arrest, and you're about to get questioned for that crime you're being accused of. So if it's like, I arrest you, and it's like, hey, you know what? What's your middle name? How do you spell your last name? What's your date of birth? What's your next of kin in case anything happens to you, or if you want, somebody notified for what's going on here, whatever. I don't have to Mirandize you for that. And I see that a lot. And then of course the big scenes where they're in an interrogation room, and you have the detective or the cop screaming at them and waving their arms around like a drunk octopus. And it's like, no, the best interrogators I've ever seen, they make friends with these people. They find common ground. And, it's kind of like Columbo. I loved Columbo. He was always that guy who's like, one more thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing. Yeah. And man, I've watched some that were just amazing. And I'm like, yeah. So that's just a few that's just off the top of my head.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Well, that could segue into the next into a next question here. Like from supervising special units to writing thrillers and then also giving your advice over 25-year career, what skills transferred unexpectedly well from those two things?
I think the communication thing, because in order to be a good cop, and I thought I was a good cop, and I was a good boss, I thought as well, you have to be able to communicate with people. Verbally, orally, et cetera, et cetera. And that has helped me later on with the book stuff. Going back to the podcast, I got a 4-book deal from a publisher just as having him a guest on my show. If I wasn't a good communicator and if I couldn't do it, it never would have happened. The Wall Street Journal thing would never have happened if I didn't have my podcast, if I didn't have my Facebook group. I've had television stuff happen. Again, it's how you deal with people.
I love it. I'm gonna write it down. We're typing a little bit right here because we write down these takeaways, and I think that's definitely a really good takeaway right there. Is good communication. But I'm in the sales business in the real estate world and have been for 30 years, and it blows my mind how many times I have to pound my desk every day about communication. But we have to communicate. That's what we do. We go talk to somebody. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean,
especially in this day and age, like, I text them. You didn't communicate with them. You just send them a text. Like, talk to them.
Yep, absolutely.
Who said the biggest fallacy about communication that's actually taken place?
You're right. I can't remember. That's
I can't remember that either. But
I think about that all the time.
And one more thing I think is embracing technology. I just think about when I first started, we were handwriting our reports with carbon paper.
Yeah.
And when I left, there were no computers in our squad cars. There were no cameras. There was none of that when I first started.
Yeah.
So, and I embraced it because I knew how to type. So, boom. So
a lot faster.
And now
with skill set that served you, no doubt, with writing books, right?
Yes, exactly. And then on top of that, it's like, not to get too caught up in like technology, but AI. in the writer sphere, people are losing their minds over this right now.
Right.
Some, it's like, I think it's going to affect cover designers and narrators the hardest at first, because
Mhm.
AI really isn't writing good quality books just on its own. You
Right.
still need a person.
Right.
And if you don't embrace that technology, you're going to be left in the dirt.
Yeah.
Either you embrace it and you figure out how you can make that work for you. And I did the same thing as a cop. It's like, okay, we got these computer things now, in our squad cars. I'm like, good. And it's like, hey, all of our reports are going to be typed on a computer. Excellent. My handwriting's horrible.
Yeah.
So as long as you keep your mind open to these things and kind of keep a thought in your head, it's like, okay, how am I going to make this work for me? That's what you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
And
like that approach. That's a
and
good one.
I'll give a nod to our friends at Paperback Expert. Michael Delan is the founder of
Mhm.
that company, and we asked him, in this day and age of writing, helping your clients finish writing their books and so forth, what do you have to say about AI? And first of all, he took a long, hard laugh, and second, he said, "Have you ever tried to read one of those books?" He said, "It's the most terribly written, boring things in the world." And it kind of goes right along with what we teach over here is like AI can be extremely valuable, but it's garbage in, garbage out, or gold in, gold out.
Yes,
And if you,
absolutely.
yes. And if you want AI to produce wonderful things for you, you have to put very wonderful, poignant, and focused things into it. Right. And so AI is not going to delineate and it's not going to provide your strategy, but it'll provide some pretty cool stuff if you can do that. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a learning curve, but once you learn that, then
always,
it's going to be your buddy.
yeah.
I will say I have been when how Gemini with Google will pull up like, used to you Googled like something and then now it gives you this summation or whatever. And I've been screenshotting the times that
It's conflicting.
it's conflicting
Contradictory.
and contradictory in its
Yes.
information. It'll start off with a yes, and then by the time it's done 3 sentences later, it's telling you a no. And I've been screenshotting those just because I'm so tickled about them.
Yeah.
It'll catch up, I'm quite certain. But
Oh,
It
yeah.
will.
now I'm like, I
yes.
really like it to see it contradicted. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of true crime, Patrick, can you share a moment from your police career that would pretty much be too unbelievable for fiction?
Oh boy. There's so many that are not rated G. Um, I'll give you a heartwarming story. How's that?
Perfect.
And I have one that's, I guess it could be heartwarming, but it was like crazier than I would have ever imagined. I'll start with that, then I'll finish with heartwarming. Okay.
Sounds great.
The beginning one was I was called to a man with a rifle. I was a cop working midnight to 8, and we got the call at about 7:00 in the morning. We're like, ooh, this is probably true. We would get all night long we're chasing gunfire and people, man with their gun, shots fired, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times it was false information, or you'd get there and there'd be a bunch of casings and no body, somebody shooting a gun off. It was just where I worked. That was normal. And if it's 7:00 in the morning, there's multiple callers and I'm like, okay, that's real. It's going on right now. So I was by myself, which is uncharacteristic of where I worked. It was one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, if not the country. And there was only one other cop that was available, and there was a sergeant. Sergeant gets me on a side channel. He says, hey, I'm really far away. It's going to be a while. I'm like, okay. So I get the other cop on the other end that's coming with me. I'm like, hey, Wojo, I'm coming. This is where we're going to park. We're going to approach this tactically, blah, blah, blah. And he hated overtime. This guy, and he could have been a comedian. He could have been a stand-up comic. He was so funny. Oh my Lord. And he's like, yeah, okay, brother. And I'm like, Wojo, here we go. So I haul ass. I get there. I park about a block away. I take out the shotgun and I'm like approaching this very tactically. Nobody's firing a gun off right now. And there's Wojo's car in front of our target house. And I'm like, well, that's really stupid. You never park in front of, for any assignment. There's a barking dog or a man with a rifle or whatever. Never, never, never. And I'm like, oh boy. And he's not answering his radio. And I'm like, well, that's not good. The front door is open to a 4 family. It's apartment complex with 4 units. And I'm getting information from the dispatcher. It's this, like unit B or whatever. It was upstairs. I'll never forget it. I got the shotgun out and I can hear him talking in the background. I meet her around the corner. There's a guy laying in bed, just wearing his boxers with a rifle to a 6-year-old kid's head.
Oh,
the muzzle is resting on the kid's temple. This poor kid is just trembling. And I'm like, ugh. Well, I've got the shotgun, which is not the right weapon for this scenario because we have 00 buck. And what happens is those projectiles come out and then they start making a very large pattern. It's not precise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh boy, this is not good. And Wojo actually has a conversation going with the guy, again, communicating, and I'm his cover guy. So I'm like, if his finger was off the trigger, if his finger goes to the trigger, I'm going to have to toss his shotgun down, use my pistol, and shoot this guy. I don't have a choice. So, Wojo being Wojo, he's like, dude, here's the story. They already called the SWAT team. This is going to be a circus. Bring the tents. The mayor, everybody's going to be here. We're going to be here all night long and all day long. And he said, you know what? Most likely somebody who's a lot better shot is going to take you out. You're going to be dead. Or you can stand up and be a man, put your hands behind your back, and let's get this over with. He says, I don't want to be here all day. I hate overtime. And he looked at him. He says, all right. So
wow.
He dropped the rifle, stood up, put his hands behind his back, and I grabbed the rifle, I grabbed the kid, and we're all walking out the front door as the SWAT team and all these people are like rushing to the scene. It's like, we got this, guys. Don't worry about it. Go back home.
What a story! Oh wow, wow. Communication and a little humor. I don't like overtime.
See, and that's something you would never see on a TV show or a movie. It's like that's real. This guy hated. He despised. So we're going to be here till at least noon today, but at least it's not going to be here till midnight tonight because that's what it would have been if everybody else would have showed up. And this guy probably would have been shot and killed.
Right.
Oh wow!
All right.
What a story.
So,
let's hear your heartwarming one.
A heartwarming story was I was in charge of our licensed premise car, which we affectionately call it the tavern car because most of our problems in the city were with taverns. And not just like underage drinkers. We're talking about people getting killed, gang hideouts, blah, blah, blah. Gambling, vice, prostitution, you name it. So we had an underage bar. This was so stupid. I don't know why the city even approved it, but it didn't last. Where they mixed underage kids, they had to be 18, with the ones that could drink in the same space. And, if you were under 18, if you're under 21, excuse me, you had to wear like a purple wristband. But if you were illegal, you didn't have to wear a wristband. It's like,
oh, wow.
Whatever. So you can imagine the problems we had with this. So we're trying to get it closed. So I'm sitting in an undercover car. It was a Jeep Cherokee with another cop. And we were videotaping what was going on in front of this bar. And it was just bedlam. It was crazy city USA. Neighbors are complaining like crazy, blah, blah. But when it comes time to present our case to the city attorney, pictures worth 1,000 words. So I would videotape what was going on. So we're just sitting there videotaping away, and we're right by a gas station. This girl, probably about 20, 21, pulls up to the front. It was cold. It's Wisconsin. She's got the engine running still. She goes out to grab a pack of smokes. She's a waitress working 2 jobs and going to college. She just bought this. It was a Nissan Sentra. It was brand new. That was her whole life. So one of these pieces of garbage came over, hopped in. She sees it happening. She's running after her own car. She grabs the side mirror on the door. He drags her out into the street.
Ooh.
And we're like, holy shit. Now, this is an undercover car. There's no lights or sirens and no police radio, but we had our handhelds. So I took off after him. I chased this guy for probably about 6-7 blocks, and he went up on a snow. But he lost control because the weather was so bad, and I had 4-wheel drive. He didn't, and he didn't know how to drive. So he goes up in a snowbank. He takes off like a rabbit. We get him, And that girl, she was watching it, and she actually walked those like 6 blocks. And I'm just like, are you okay? You know, her elbows are all, scraped up, her knees. I said, next time, don't grab the car, please. It's not worth it. You're lucky you didn't get run over by this asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I know. But then she explained to me how this car is her whole life. She was so proud of it. This is the first car she bought by herself. She's working 2 jobs. And she said, this is my lifeline. This car is my lifeline. This is how I make money. She said, if I didn't have this car, I wouldn't be making money.
Yeah.
So I was able just to flip her the keys after we processed it. And this little turd went to jail. And I was never more happy because most of the time when we respond to something, the crime's already been committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was so
to
nice to
actually
give her that.
save that car.
Yeah, get to see it
and
react
yes.
in real time. Yeah.
Oh, what a great story. Patrick, what a pleasure it's been to have you on the show today. We're going to roll right into our 3 takeaways for today. Michael, you go right ahead.
Yeah. The first one I loved, dig the well before you're thirsty. And that is fantastic advice, no matter what endeavor you are doing. So hopefully that hit a listener just right.
The second is be consistent with your presence on all platforms. Now, it might seem like common sense to a lot of people that, hey, you're cops and writers on one platform, you need to be cops and writers on the other ones. But that does not always happen, folks. So congratulations, you're doing it perfectly.
And you can see how when Pat did that, he got book deal out of it. His different platforms blew up.
Yeah.
So be consistent on that. And then the final one that I loved was good communication. Pat, great advice. I can't say it enough. Like I said earlier in the program, good communication is priceless. And clearly your police skills, 25 years of doing that job. We'd like to thank you for your service. By the way, we love the police officers. My stepfather was 31 years with Gwinnett County here outside of Atlanta. Yep. And good communication is key. So,
it sure is.
Can I give one more?
Sure.
Make your own luck. Nobody's going to do it for you. I tell you what, I released a bunch of books rapidly. So I had a book signing event that I staged myself. I didn't wait for somebody to say, hey, we'll do a book signing. No, I'll do my own. I went to Lake Country Cigars in Delafield, Wisconsin. And I tell you what, the turnout was amazing, but I called the local news stations beforehand. I wasn't waiting for them to find me or be discovered. I'm like, all right, so they did 2 news stories on me. Now I've got a digital footprint. Now the algorithms are tickling pretty good. Same thing with the Wall Street Journal thing. I'm not just going to sit back and say, oh, cool, I was in the Wall Street Journal. Oh, no. Pat's going to leverage that.
You bet. Yeah. Leverage is the name of the game. And that's how when you're consistent on all those platforms, you're leveraging one into the other. They're feeding into one another and they're stacking. It's like platform stacking, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, I love it. Well,
fantastic advice. And I want to give a shout out to Mickey Kennedy, another one of our clients with e-releases. I was just reading his 8 steps this morning on a revisit. And he talked about exactly what you're saying, Pat, is get that information to your local news outlets. Don't let them find you. Send them that. They're always looking for human stories. That they can send to their listeners. And
people want content. Never forget that. People want content.
They want really fantastic content.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll wrap up here today, Patrick, but man, we'd love to have you back on sometime. I've really enjoyed this.
I'd love to be on. Absolutely.
You got it. Well, how can the audience learn more?
copsandwriters.com is the website. If you want to email me, sarge@copsandwriters.com.
That's perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. Once again, thank you for your service and thank you for what you're doing today. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.